My life didn't fall apart all at once. It split in two, and I didn't even realize it at the time, not the moment I found out about the affair. That came later, and it was terrible in its own way. But the real split, the one that left something permanently broken, happened at my daughter's birthday party, surrounded by people I thought I knew. But that part comes later. 22 years. That's how long Diana and I were married. Long enough that I stopped thinking of it as a marriage and started thinking of it as a fact. Like the address of your childhood home, like your own name. You don't question it, it just is. We had 4 kids, Christy, the oldest, then Marcus and Daniel, then Jane, our youngest. We had a house, a real one, paid off with a yard and enough space that each kid had their own room. And Diana had stopped working years before, back when Christy was small, and neither of us had ever really questioned that either. It worked. We made it work. I was never under the illusion that our marriage was perfect. No marriage is. But I believed, genuinely believed, that the foundation was solid. That we were 2 people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other. Day after day, year after year. Some foundations crack slowly. You don't notice until you step on the wrong tile. I found out in the most banal way imaginable. A phone left unlocked on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I was just walking past. Until I wasn't. I stood there for a long time. If this story is starting to feel off, you can subscribe. What comes next changes everything more than expected. Long enough that the screen went dark, I turned it back on, read it again, put the phone exactly where I found it, walked to the garage. I sat in my car and didn't move for 40 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was something quieter and more unsettling than either of those things. I felt like I was watching my own life from a very great distance and realizing it wasn't quite the shape I thought it was. When I told Diana I wanted a divorce, she didn't deny anything. She cried. She asked me to reconsider. She used words like mistake and nothing and it's over. I had already spoken to a lawyer. My kids were adults. That was the one thing I was grateful for. I didn't have to navigate custody arrangements or school pickups or explaining to a 9-year-old why daddy was packing a bag. Christy was 25, Marcus 23, Daniel 21. Jane had just turned 20. I sat them down together and told them as plainly as I could, your mother and I are separating. This is not anyone's fault except mine and hers. I love all of you. That doesn't change. Marcus and Daniel nodded slowly. Jane started to cry. And Christy's jaw tightened in a way I recognized because she looked exactly like her mother when she was preparing to fight. Dad, she said, you can't just blow up the whole family. I'm not blowing up the family, I told her. I'm ending a marriage. They're the same thing. They weren't. But I didn't push it that day. I let the conversation end there and assumed naively that she would come around. That time would help, that all 4 of them would eventually find their footing. Some foundations crack slowly. You don't notice it until something gives way under your feet. Marcus and Daniel gave me space. Jane was sad, but she didn't put it on me. She understood that being sad and assigning blame were different things. But Christy never stopped pushing. She called constantly. She showed up. She sent long messages that always circled back to the same request. Just try counseling. Just give it a chance. You owe it to the family. Every conversation ended the same way, with her crying and me explaining again, calmly, why I couldn't do what she was asking. And every time I thought, she's grieving, she's scared, she loves her mother, this will pass. That was the first time I got it wrong. Jane turned 20 at the end of that summer. We decided, all of us, including Diana, that we would still come together for the occasion. One evening, one birthday dinner, for Jane. My lawyer advised against it. I told her it would be fine. One dinner, 2 hours. We were adults. I arrived early and stood in the kitchen talking to Marcus while the others came in. Diana arrived with Christy. They stood close together the way people do when they're bracing against something. I nodded across the room. Diana nodded back. For the first hour, it was almost manageable. Jane was happy, which was the point. The conversation stayed surface level. Food, music, some story about Marcus's new job. I kept my side of the table light. Then Diana stood up to give a small toast. She said it was so good to have the whole family together. That family was what mattered most, especially during hard times. That she hoped we could all remember what we meant to each other, no matter what was happening. She looked at me when she said the last part. The table went quiet, not the comfortable kind of quiet. Marcus put his glass down. "Mom, tonight's Jane's night." "I know that," Diana said. "Then maybe let her have it." Christy pushed back from the table slightly. She was just saying something nice. "She was making a point," Marcus said. "There's a difference." The argument that followed was brief but sharp, the kind that leaves marks. And then Jane, who had been quiet through all of it, set down her fork. "Christy," she said, "I need to ask you something." Something shifted in the room. I couldn't have said what exactly, just a change in weight, like the air had gotten heavier. "Why have you been fighting so hard for this?" Jane asked. "Because it's not just about Mom and Dad. It's not just about the family. What is it actually about?" Christy didn't answer right away. She looked at her mother, and that one look told me everything before Jane said another word. That's when everything changed. "She knew," Jane said, still looking at Christy. "She knew. She had known the whole time. And she covered for her." No one moved. Christy's face went through several things very quickly. First denial, then something that looked like it wanted to be anger. Then, and this was the one that stayed, something that looked almost like relief, the kind that comes when you stop holding something too heavy for too long. "Mom asked me not to say anything," Christy said quietly. I heard the words, and for a second, I couldn't process them. And then I sat very still while my brain did the work of reassembling everything I thought I knew into a shape I didn't recognize. Yeah, she hadn't just been defending her mother out of love. She hadn't just been scared of losing the family. She had known. She had known before I did. She had watched me sit across from her mother at dinner, walk through our house, make plans, and she had said nothing. And when I found out and started to leave, she had fought me on it. Not to protect the marriage, to protect the secret, to protect herself. I stood up from the table. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say that wouldn't make it worse. I got my coat. I walked to the door. Jane called after me, but I just kept moving. I drove home and sat in the same spot in my garage where I had sat the night I found out about Diana. Different betrayal. Same garage, same particular quality of silence. I'd been thinking about this divorce as a loss. A painful one, but a clean one. A break from one person who had made one choice that I couldn't live with. I'd been grieving the end of a marriage. This was different. I didn't even have a name for it yet. A version of my family that I had believed in. A version of my daughter that I had believed in. Christy called that night. I didn't answer. She called again the next morning. I didn't answer that time either. I thought about what it would take to forgive her. I tried to build a case for it in my head. She was young. She was loyal to her mother. She didn't fully understand what she was protecting. I tried all of it. None of it quite landed. Because the thing she had done wasn't just loyalty to her mother. It was a choice, made repeatedly over time, to let me stay in the dark. And then, when I started to see clearly, it was a choice to push me back toward the dark instead of telling me the truth. She knew. She covered it up. And when I was leaving, she tried to stop me. Some foundations crack slowly. You don't notice until you step on the wrong tile. I don't know yet what my relationship with Christy looks like from here. Maybe, in time, there's a conversation that opens something. Maybe there isn't. I'm not going to make a decision about that in a garage at midnight while the whole thing is still raw. What I do know is this. I'm not angry at her the way I expected to be. I'm something quieter and more complicated than angry. I'm standing in the space where trust used to be, looking at how much room it took up, realizing I never noticed it until it was gone. The divorce will be finalized in a few months. The house will be sold. Diana will move on. I will move on. My children, the ones who stood with me honestly, even when it was hard, will move on with me. As for Christy, she can call whenever she's ready to have an honest conversation. I'll be here. But some foundations once cracked don't go back to what they were. They become something else entirely, or they don't hold at all. And once you see it, you don't walk the same way again. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and remain. There are more truths like this, waiting quietly to be told.